Tom Wilson stood at the podium of the Galactic Council chambers, trying his best to keep his face neutral as laughter echoed through the vast hall. The massive chamber, with its soaring crystal ceiling and floating platforms, housed representatives from over 200 alien species. Right now, most of them were laughing at humanity's latest space safety proposal. You want to add a *4 backup system to your colony ships. The blue-scaled representative wheezed through his breathing tubes. What's next? Bubble wrap for your asteroids. More laughter filled the chamber. Tom took a deep breath and looked down at his notes. After 5 years as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, he was used to this treatment. Humans were considered the most fearful species in known space, a reputation that had stuck since first contact 50 years ago. He remembered the videos from that day. While alien diplomats had stepped onto Earth's soil wearing simple environment suits, the human greeting party had arrived in fully sealed hazmat gear, carrying disease detection equipment and atmospheric sensors. The aliens had found it hilarious then, just as they found human caution hilarious now. The addition of another backup life support system would increase colony ship survival rates by 23%, Tom said, keeping his voice steady. The cost is minimal compared to... Compared to what? Interrupted War Chief Cole of the Ridge Hunters, his massive frame rising from his platform. The cost to your species' dignity. You humans wrap yourselves in layers of protection, hide behind shields, and jump at shadows. Where is your warrior spirit? Tom fought back a sigh. The Ridge Hunters, like many of the older species, measured civilization's worth in battle scars and glorious deaths. They couldn't understand why humans insisted on things like safety railings in space stations or triple-checked airlocks. We prefer our colonists alive rather than gloriously dead, Tom replied, allowing a slight edge to enter his voice. And speaking of shadows, he pressed a button on his datapad, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a swirling mass of darkness at the edge of mapped space, like a tear in the fabric of reality itself. This anomaly appeared 3 days ago near the outer rim. Our long-range sensors detect unusual energy patterns that match no known phenomena. We recommend immediate investigation, but with proper safety protocols. Bah! The Ridge Hunter chief waved one massive arm. Another shadow for the humans to fear. We've explored thousands of space anomalies. They're as common as stardust. Not like this one, Tom insisted. Our readings show. Perhaps, interrupted Council Elder Vax, his ancient face creased with amusement, we should send human ships to investigate. They're so well protected after all, though it might take them a year just to finish their safety checklists. The chamber erupted in laughter again. Tom noticed that some of the younger species representatives weren't laughing as hard. They had seen human caution pay off before. Just last year, a human mining operation had been the only one to survive when a supposedly stable star went nova. Their excessive early warning systems and paranoid evacuation protocols had saved 10,000 lives. The warrior races had called it luck. As Tom gathered his materials to leave the podium, his communicator buzzed. The message was from Dr. Alice Reed at the Human Science Division. Energy readings from anomaly growing exponentially. Something's coming through. Tom looked up at the still chuckling council members, a chill running down his spine. Humans were called cowards because they could sense danger, because millions of years of evolution had taught them to feel fear and respond to it. Right now, every human instinct was screaming that this anomaly was different. It was wrong. But the council wouldn't listen. They never did, not until it was too late. As he walked back to his office, Tom began composing messages to Earth Command. They would need to start preparing, even if they had to do it alone. Better to be called cowards than to be dead heroes. The humans would be ready, whether the rest of the galaxy believed them or not. After all, what the other species called cowardice, humans called survival. 3 weeks after the council meeting, Dr. Alice Reed stared at her display screen with growing horror. Another alien ship had vanished near the anomaly, the fifth one this week. She watched as the vessel's signal blinked out, just like all the others. "Play it again," she ordered her computer. The recording showed the Ridge Hunter battle cruiser charging straight toward the dark tear in space. No scanning, no cautious approach, just pure warrior confidence. Then, nothing. The door to her lab opened, and Tom Wilson walked in. He looked tired. 3 emergency council sessions in 1 week would do that to anyone. "How bad?" he asked, joining her at the display. "Worse than we thought." Alice pulled up a new set of readings. "The anomaly is growing. And there's something else. Look at these energy patterns." Tom leaned closer. The screen showed waves of dark energy pulsing from the tear, like a heartbeat. "It's alive." "Not exactly. But something inside it is." Alice's fingers flew over the controls. "Something old. Really old. The energy signature suggests it predates most of our galaxies." A loud chime interrupted them. The main screen lit up with a new transmission. Another council meeting was starting. They watched as War Chief Cole's angry face filled the display. "5 ships," he roared. "5 of our finest vessels, lost to this coward's nightmare. The Ridge Hunters demand action. We will gather our war fleet and—" "With all respect," Tom cut in, "charging in with more ships isn't the answer. Dr. Reed has new data that—" "Silence, human." Cole's face turned darker with rage. "While you hide and study, our warriors die. The Ridge Hunters will show you how to face a threat, with courage and strength." The transmission split into multiple screens as other species joined the debate. The Rock Breakers wanted to blow up the anomaly. The Star Dancers suggested trying to communicate with it. Nobody wanted to listen to the humans. Alice muted the argument and turned to Tom. "They don't understand. These readings." She pulled up another chart. "Whatever's in there, it's not just destroying ships. It's consuming them. Energy, matter, even the crew's neural patterns. Everything gets absorbed." Tom rubbed his tired eyes. "How long?" "Before what's inside breaks through completely." At the current growth rate, Alice ran a quick calculation. 2 weeks, maybe less. Tom nodded slowly. He'd seen that look in her eyes before. The same look humans got when ancient instincts told them to run, to hide, to prepare. Other species called it cowardice. Humans called it survival sense. "I'll talk to Earth Command," he said. "We'll need to start evacuating our outer colonies quietly and get our defense fleet ready." "The other species will mock us again," Alice warned. "They'll say we're overreacting." "Let them." Tom's voice was firm. "Better mocked than." A new alarm blared through the lab. Alice's screens filled with urgent data. The anomaly was pulsing faster, stronger, and now they could see something moving inside it. Massive shapes, writhing in the darkness. New energy spike. Alice's hands raced across her controls. "Oh no." The main screen showed a Ridge Hunter war fleet approaching the anomaly. 50 ships in attack formation. They'd launched their assault without waiting for council approval. "They're going to get themselves killed," Tom whispered. Alice shook her head. "Worse, they're going to wake it up. All those ships, all that energy. It's like ringing a dinner bell." They watched in helpless silence as the war fleet charged forward, weapons blazing with warrior pride. The anomaly seemed to pulse with anticipation. Tom turned away from the screen and pulled out his communicator. "I'm calling Earth Command. Full emergency protocols." He paused at the door. "Get your team ready. Alice, I have a feeling we're going to need every bit of human caution to survive what's coming." As she began sending urgent messages to her research team, Alice glanced one last time at the screen. The Ridge Hunter fleet was almost at the anomaly now, and in the darkness beyond the tear, something was waiting. Sometimes, she thought, the real courage was in admitting you were afraid. The Ridge Hunter fleet lasted exactly 6 minutes. Tom Wilson watched the recordings for the 10th time in his office. 50 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy reduced to nothing. But it wasn't the destruction that scared him. It was how it happened. The ships hadn't been destroyed. They had turned on each other. "Play it again," he told his computer. On the screen, the Ridge Hunter ships approached the anomaly, weapons ready. Then the darkness reached out, like fingers of black smoke. The ships stopped. And then they started firing. At each other. His door chimed. Alice Reed walked in, carrying a new data tablet. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "We figured it out," she said, dropping into a chair. "Those things in the anomaly, they're emotion eaters." Tom blinked. "They're what?" "They feed on strong emotions. Aggression, battle rage, warrior spirit." She gestured at the screen, where the Ridge Hunter ships were still destroying each other. All the things the warrior races are so proud of. It's like candy to these creatures. Before Tom could respond, his emergency communicator buzzed. The council was calling again. When he answered, the chamber was chaos. Dozens of species were shouting at once. "The rock breakers have lost contact with their home system," one voice called. "The Star Dancer's defense fleet went dark an hour ago. The entities are spreading. They're everywhere." Tom looked at Alice. She nodded grimly. The anomaly was just their entry point. Now they're moving through normal space, hunting for more emotions to feed on. On the council screens, more reports poured in. The warrior races were being hit hardest. Their aggressive responses to the threat only made them bigger targets. Their mighty fleets were turning against their own worlds. The council must act. Elder Vax's voice cut through the chaos. The ancient alien looked shaken. "We need all ships, all warriors." "No." Tom stood up. "That's exactly what we must not do." The chamber fell silent. Tom took a deep breath. These entities feed on aggression. The more we fight, the stronger they get. But humans, he looked at Alice, who nodded encouragingly. "We've been preparing differently." He pressed a button, and new images appeared. Human ships, but not war vessels. These were huge, blocky things, bristling with sensors and surrounded by layered shields. "Observation ships," Tom explained. "No weapons, no aggressive intent, just watching, learning, understanding." And our colonies. Another image. Massive underground bunkers. "We're not fighting. We're hiding. Surviving." "Cowardice," someone shouted, but the cry sounded weak. "Is it?" Alice stepped forward. "Our cowardly ships are the only ones the entities ignore. They can't feed on fear. They need aggressive emotions, fighting spirit, and now we know how to hurt them." She showed new data. "They're ancient, but they're not invincible. They need emotion to maintain their form in our space. Without it, they start to break down. And humans," she smiled slightly. "Well, we're very good at staying calm in a crisis, when we have to." More alerts flashed across the screens. 3 more warrior species had lost contact with their worlds. The entities were spreading faster. "We have a plan," Tom said quietly. "But you'll have to trust the cowards. You'll have to learn to be careful, cautious, and yes, afraid. Because fear isn't weakness. Fear is what keeps you alive long enough to find a solution." The council chamber was silent. Then Elder Vax stood up. "The mighty have fallen," the ancient alien said slowly. Perhaps it is time to listen to the cautious." Tom nodded. Outside his window, he could see Earth's defense fleet assembling. Not to fight, but to observe, to wait, to survive. The entities were coming. But for once, humanity's cautious nature might be exactly what the galaxy needed. Sometimes, the worst thing you could do was be brave. Admiral Bill Parker watched from his command chair as another wave of entities swept through space towards his fleet. The massive black shapes twisted and writhed, hungry for the emotions they usually found in military vessels. But the human ships just sat there, quiet and dark. "Status report," he said calmly, even as the entities surrounded them. "All crews maintaining meditation protocols," his second-in-command reported. "Emotion dampeners at full power. They still can't see us, sir." The Admiral nodded. When the entities had first invaded, every warrior race in the galaxy had launched massive attacks. Their fleets had fallen within hours, turned against their own worlds by the emotion-eating creatures. But the human ships, with their cowardly defensive focus, had survived. His communicator blinked. It was Tom Wilson, speaking from the Emergency Council chamber on Earth. "Admiral, we're reading multiple entity swarms heading for the Rockbreaker refugee fleet. They need cover." "Understood." Parker turned to his crew. "Move to intercept. Standard Ghost protocol." The human fleet moved slowly, deliberately. No sudden actions. No aggressive maneuvers. Their ships, wrapped in layers of emotion-dampening shields, were practically invisible to the entities. They had learned it the hard way, watching other species fight and die. Through his view screen, Parker could see the refugee ships, hundreds of vessels packed with survivors from fallen warrior worlds. They had learned to be quiet too now. Learned to dampen their warrior spirits and battle songs. Learned to be cowards like the humans. "Entity swarm approaching Refugee Sector 7, his sensor officer reported. "They're hunting." Parker pressed a button on his chair. "All ships, extend dampening fields. Remember your training. Clear minds. Calm hearts." The human fleet spread out around the refugee ships, their special shields creating a bubble of emotional emptiness. Inside those bubbles, the entities couldn't sense anything worth feeding on. They drifted away, frustrated and hungry. His screen lit up again. This time, it was Dr. Alice Reed. "Admiral, we finished analyzing the data from your last encounter," she said. "The entities aren't just weak against emotional void. They're actually starting to starve. The human approach is working." Parker allowed himself a small smile. Humanity's excessive caution had led them to develop these dampening shields years ago, worried about potential psychic attacks. Other species had laughed at their paranoia. Nobody was laughing now. "Incoming transmission from the Ridge Hunter Evacuation Group," his comm officer called out. "War Chief Cole requests permission to learn human meditation techniques." That made Parker's smile wider. The mighty Ridge Hunters, who had once mocked humans for their cautious nature, were now asking to learn their ways. Fear had become wisdom. Cowardice had become strength. A warning alarm flashed. "Multiple entity swarms converging on our position," his sensor officer reported. "Biggest group we've seen yet. They must be getting desperate." "Hold position," Parker ordered. "Maintain emotional dampening. Let them come." The black shapes filled his view screen, twisting and searching, but they couldn't find what they needed. No rage, no battle fury, no warrior pride. Just calm, careful human ships, protecting others with their shields of cowardice. "They're starting to break down," Alice reported excitedly. "The entities can't maintain their form without emotional energy. Keep it up." Parker watched as the massive swarm began to dissipate, the entities growing weaker by the minute. In the end, humanity's greatest weakness had become the galaxy's salvation. Their caution, their fear, their careful nature. These were the weapons that would win this war. "Send word to all ships," he ordered. "The human way is working. Patience and protection will see us through." As the entities faded away, Parker thought about how strange it was. In a galaxy full of proud warrior races, it had taken the cowards to save everyone. Sometimes, the best defense wasn't a strong offense. Sometimes, it was just being smart enough to be afraid. 1 month after the human fleets began their defensive campaign, the Galactic Council met again. But this time, everything was different. Tom Wilson stood at the same podium where he had once been mocked. Now, representatives from every surviving species listened in complete silence as he spoke. Even the mighty warrior races sat quietly, their battle pride replaced by newfound respect. "The entities are weakening," Tom announced. showing the latest scans. Their numbers have dropped by 70%. They can't maintain their form without emotional energy to feed on. And thanks to humanity's defensive protocols being adopted across the galaxy, they're starving. Dr. Alice Reed stepped up next to him, adding her own data to the display. The meditation techniques we developed, combined with our emotion-dampening shields, have protected over 2,000 refugee ships. Every race that has adopted our methods has survived. Those who kept fighting. She paused sadly. We all know what happened to them. The chamber was quiet. Everyone remembered the fallen worlds, the lost fleets, the proud warrior races who had charged into battle only to be turned against their own people. War Chief Cole, one of the few Ridge Hunter leaders to survive, stood up. He looked different now, calmer, more controlled. My people once called humans cowards, he said. We were wrong. You saw the true nature of courage, the wisdom to step back, to think, to protect rather than attack. Admiral Parker's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from his flagship. Entity swarms are retreating toward the anomaly, he reported. They're trying to return to their own space. Our defensive line is holding steady, maintaining emotional void protocols. Tom nodded. And now we come to the final phase of our plan. He looked around the chamber. We need every ship, every world, every being in the galaxy to join in what humans do best, being careful. The plan was simple, the kind that only a cowardly race would think of. No grand battles, no heroic last stands. Instead, the entire galaxy would simply shut down. Every ship would activate emotion dampeners. Every world would enter meditation protocols. They would create an emotional void so vast that the entities would have no choice but to leave or starve. The entities are ancient, Alice explained. They've survived by finding warrior races, feeding on their aggression and pride. But they've never encountered a species like humans, one that evolved to be cautious, to feel fear, to value survival over glory. Hours passed as the galaxy went quiet. The entities, desperate for emotional energy, tried to provoke responses. They attacked empty stations, threatened civilian ships, even attempted to breach planetary shields. But everyone held to the human protocols. No response, no anger, no fear, just calm, careful waiting. Tom watched the readings as the entities began to fade. First, the smaller ones winked out, their forms dissolving without emotional energy to sustain them. Then the larger swarms started breaking apart. Finally, the few remaining entities fled back through the anomaly, returning to their own dimension. Close it, Tom ordered. The human fleet, positioned around the anomaly, activated their newest invention, emotion void generators that would seal the dimensional tear forever. Another cowardly solution, using careful science instead of brute force. In the council chamber, Elder Vax slowly stood. The galaxy owes its survival to the humans, he said, to the race we mocked as fearful, as weak as cowards. He bowed his ancient head. We now understand that what we called cowardice was wisdom. What we saw as weakness was strength. Tom smiled as he looked around the chamber. The warrior races were learning meditation. The proud species were installing safety protocols. The galaxy was changing, becoming more human. There's an old saying on Earth, he told them. The brave may not live long, but the cautious never lived at all. We proved that wrong. The cautious didn't just live. We saved everyone else too. As the council chamber filled with quiet applause, Tom thought about how far they'd come. The humans, once mocked as the cowards of the galaxy, had taught everyone a vital lesson. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is admit that you're afraid. 5 years after the entity invasion, the Galactic Council looked very different. Tom Wilson smiled as he walked through the new council chambers, noticing all the changes that human influence had brought. Every entrance now had triple-sealed safety doors. Emergency escape pods lined the walls. Multiple backup systems hummed quietly in the background. But the biggest changes weren't in the technology. They were in the people. "Ambassador Wilson," a deep voice called. Tom turned to see War Chief Cull approaching, but not with his old aggressive stride. The Ridge Hunter leader moved carefully, mindfully, like he had learned in human meditation classes. "Your morning safety inspection is scheduled for today, yes?" "That's right," Tom replied, still amazed at how much things had changed. The Ridge Hunters, once the most warrior-like species in the galaxy, now ran the Council's Safety Committee. They applied their old fighting energy to protecting people instead of charging into battle. In the main chamber, Dr. Alice Reed was giving a lecture to young aliens from dozens of species. Her topic: the evolutionary advantages of caution. The students took careful notes, no longer dismissing human ideas as cowardly. The entities changed everything. A quiet voice said beside him. Elder Vax had approached silently, another habit learned from humans. "But perhaps we needed changing." Tom nodded as they walked together. Through the chamber's windows, they could see ships from many species flying past. All of them now carried human-designed safety systems. All of them now trained their crews in emotional control and careful thinking. "The warrior races have found new ways to be strong," Vax continued. "The Ridge Hunters protect. The Rock Breakers build shelters. The Star Dancers teach safety protocols." He smiled. "All because the cowards showed us a better way." They reached the new memorial hall, where images showed the worlds and fleets lost in the entity invasion. Below them, words in every galactic language spelled out the lesson learned. Wisdom is understanding when to be afraid. "There's a new ship design competition next week," Tom mentioned as they walked. "Every entry has to have at least 4 backup systems." They both chuckled at that. The very thing Tom had been mocked for suggesting, now standard practice across the galaxy. Admiral Parker's voice came over the Council's comm system, starting the day's safety briefing. All around them, beings of every species stopped to listen. No one complained about the excessive precautions anymore. No one called it paranoid. In the training areas, young warriors learned human meditation techniques alongside combat skills. In the shipyards, vessels were built with more escape pods than weapons. In the research labs, scientists studied new ways to protect and preserve rather than attack and destroy. "We're expanding the emotion-dampening shield network next month," Vax said, "adding 3 more layers of protection to the anomaly seal." He paused. "Some say it's unnecessary, that the entities will never return." "Better safe than sorry," Tom replied with a smile. It had become a common saying in the galaxy now, translated into hundreds of languages. As they reached the Council's main security office, they found War Chief Cole teaching a class on risk assessment to former warrior race commanders. On the walls, posters showed the new galactic motto: "Caution, preparation, protection." "We thought we needed heroes," Vax said quietly. "But what we really needed were humans. Brave enough to be afraid. Strong enough to be careful. Wise enough to teach us all." Tom looked out at the changed galaxy, where being called cautious was now a compliment, where human-like meant wise instead of cowardly. The entities had tried to destroy them, but instead, they had transformed the galaxy into something better. Sometimes, the greatest victories come not from charging forward, but from knowing when to step back, think, and choose a wiser path.